Oh yeah. It was quite a rapid journey actually. I went from like never ever having considered being an author as a possibility um for me, or even something that I was interested in, to one day feeling like I was 100% called to do it.
Mm.
And once I had the realization that that's what I needed to do, it didn't take very long to get going. Like I got the first book down on paper maybe in July of 2020. And then by January 2021, it was published. And then
Mm.
two more came later that year. So it's been an interesting journey. And
Right.
it's just been a lot of me learning, like researching, learning how to do things and how things work, doing. Once I do it, I learn some more and then improve the next time. That's just been the process. And I love, like, every time I publish a book, I learn something else, right? So, and I love being able to share that because a lot of people are exploring writing now. And so I love being able to share what I learned with others.
So what was it about? So you had this sudden switch, like never considering writing children's books to suddenly feeling like this is what you were called for and are called to do. And I know you've said that a lot of it was in response to the murder of George Floyd. What was it about? I mean, so why children's books? Like why do you think that was your response, and why do you think that's such a powerful way to affect change?
Yeah, well, because it came from my kids, right? My
Mm.
older son at the time was really paying attention to what was going on. It's not like he saw, the murder, the video, but it was all over the news and everyone was talking about it. And he
How
asked
old was
me,
he at the time?
he was 8, he was 8. Yeah. And so he asked me one day, Mommy, why do police keep killing Black people?
Mm.
And he asked it so seamlessly, like he had already figured it out in his head what was going on and just needed an answer. And it just broke my heart. It really did, because I'm like, he sees this more clearly than I thought he did. He
Mm-hmm.
realizes that is something that's constant. It keeps happening. He's realizing that it's happening to Black people. He knows he's Black. So it just like broke my heart. And that's kind of what it wasn't. That question right away didn't tell me, okay, now I'm going to go write books.
Mm-hmm.
But it was another situation with my younger son, and just observing how much he loves story time and how he remember the books that he reads and how it really sticks with him. And I'm like, this is a good opportunity to put positive stories about Black people in books, so that kids can be exposed to it at an early age and remember these stories. And so I think the two incidents happening back to back, my older son asking me that question, and just me kind of observing my younger son and how he interacts with books and how he memorizes them at two,
Right.
3 years old. He knows the book because it rhymes and it sounds good, right? So I'm
Right.
like, a lot of the books that he likes are about inanimate objects, right? They're about construction vehicles or like animals and stuff. But I'm like, no, the book should be about real people so that they can like make it real and understand the message and tie it back to realness, right? And so that's why I decided to start writing, because I'm like, there's an opportunity to tell, um, to change the narrative in a way, because these kids are being exposed to the sad reality of what's happening. And it's not to negate that reality, but to also show them something else and
Right.
help them to focus on the positive. Like, sure, that happened to George Floyd, and that is so sad. And I'm so glad you're paying attention. But look at all these other Black people that are thriving and not necessarily being victimized, right? And I
Right.
wanted to show those stories.
And that is something that is really unique about yours, because they're all inspired. I mean, you really draw from real life stories. Like you said, there are so many books that are based on animal characters or construction vehicles. Like this one flip, two flip. Let me see if I'm getting there. Sorry. This one is inspired by Gabby Douglas.
Right.
And you have a dedication to her at the back, who is the gymnast who was the first African American to win the individual all around event, and that was in 2012 Summer Olympics. So, what do you think it is that's so powerful about having it tied to actual stories? I mean, you kind of touched on that some. Can you tell us a little bit more
Yeah.
about why you did that?
Yeah. Well, I know for me, somebody could tell me a story and it might inspire me, but the minute I find out that there's a real person behind the story, it inspires me 10 times more, and it makes me want to learn so much more, like how did they actually do it. And so I think, like, I want to make the story fun, but I want the message to stick, but I want them to be like, wow, that is a real person who did that. This story is about a real person, or it's inspired by a real person. I want to learn more about them. And I want to be able to say that if they can do that, then so can I.
Right.
And that is like, I think that is the basis of inspiration, in my opinion. When you see it, inspiration has to feel real, you know?
Right. Right, which kind of gets it away from just like this really abstract, like pie in the skies. Like, no, this really happened to this person. You can do it. I love that.
Right.
And
Yes.
going back to the whole idea of inspiration, I mean, that's the name of your series. Why did you pick that, the Inspired to Be? Because you talk about how you wanted to spread Black inspiration to all children. And really your books, they're about inspiring and empowering kids. Why is that so important, especially today? And what role do books have in doing that?
Yeah. I think books is that first foundation that like starts showing kids the world, and just showing them possibilities. And I mean, you asked earlier why children's book. Well, that's where they start forming their understanding of how things work. And so why not put these messages in their heads at a young age so that they can grow up knowing these things. So it's to spread Black inspiration, because you know they're all inspired by real Black people. But then I also say to all children, right? Because I think all kids can learn from these universal messages, but also see Black people living out these messages and living out, you know, these stories that I'm saying. I want them to see that Black people thrive too, you know, and Black people aren't just what you see on the news, right? They're bigger than that. So yeah, it's the name Inspired to Be is because every book sets out to inspire kids to be something. And so every book is going to be different. So you'll see Inspired to Be ... That just tells you it's not over. It's something here. Fill in the blank, whatever you want it to be. And so like with the first book, it's inspiring kids to dream big and showing them that they can do anything that they set their mind to. And they get to see the little girl in the book, Ruby, discover something that she was passionate about. And you get to see her apply herself and get the support of people around her. And you get to see her start seeing that like, wow, I could really do something with this. So she starts dreaming bigger, incrementally in the book. You see it like, okay, I'm gonna set my eye on this, and then I'm gonna work hard and achieve that. And once I achieve that, I'm gonna go to the next level. And then in the end, she gets the ultimate thing. She is a gold medalist at the Olympics, right? Like, what better than that? So she set her mind to something and she was able to accomplish it. And so I want kids to be inspired by that. The second book is inspired by a young lady named Karis Rogers, and it's called I Am Different, and it's more of an affirmation. I am different. That's a good thing. Yes, that is a good thing. I am different. And Karis Rogers, I think her story is so remarkable because she's a dark-skinned girl, and she used to get bullied about being dark-skinned, and she always had people in her family that like made her feel good about her dark skin. And her grandma used to tell her to flex in her complexion. So rather than like making the bullying get to her, she actually said, oh, I got something for you all. I'm gonna start a clothing line, and my clothing line is gonna uplift people and make them feel confident in who they are. And she did that at the age of 10, right? And so she still, to this day, I think she's 15 years old now, she still is running a very successful clothing line. And she was the youngest person to feature her work on New York Fashion Week. So not only does that inspire kids to love themselves, love being different in this story, it also shows them that like they're never too young to make a difference, right? And then the third book.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. The other was the superhero book.
Yeah, so the superhero book is inspired by Chadwick Boseman, and some of you may know him as Black Panther, and some of you may remember when he passed away. A lot of people were shocked, like, what? Like, how? What? Like, he had cancer? How? Like, he's been playing in all these movies and portraying superheroes literally, and meanwhile he was, dying. Like, we had no idea. So that intrigued me. Like, it really intrigued me, like what kind of person he was off screen. And so I started researching him, and I just learned so much about him and the traits that he embodied. And I was like, dude was a real life superhero, like
Right.
in real life. We
Mm-hmm.
see him on TV, but in real life, he was actually wearing a cape and we didn't notice it. And so I decided to write a book that was going to inspire kids to open their eyes and recognize and appreciate these people that are around us, these everyday heroes, and really normalize being a superhero, humanize it, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully it inspires them to model that behavior that they're recognizing. And it's things like being kind and being courageous and just like standing up for what you believe in, and like helping somebody. It's things like that that we take for granted and we feel like it's so little, but really it makes you a hero, and you should be proud of that. And I want kids to recognize that.
I love that. And I want to go back to the fact that you really hadn't planned on writing children's books and thought about it, because you have kind of an unusual background. So you have a degree in industrial engineering and operations research, which to me seems really, although I have to say, I have interviewed a few other authors that come from kind of a math, science, technical background, but the majority are probably more like humanities. So did that feel like a big switch to you, or in your mind, is that somehow related? What was that? What was
Yeah.
that process?
Yeah, so I do think you're right. The fields seem like night and day.
Yeah.
And my day job today, I do technology consulting.
Right.
The only thing I write is like proposals, like definitely not creative like this.
Right.
But I can see how I bring certain engineering traits into my writing. Like
Mm-hmm.
naturally, I do have an engineer's mind. Like I think very structured,
Right.
right? And that's how I approach problem solving. I'm very methodical,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I feel like I see how that comes through in my writing. And maybe it's just the fact that I write in verse, and naturally poetry is very structured and methodical. So maybe that's what it is. But I do
Right.
think it was not because of my background in engineering and how I think and process, it
Mm-hmm.
did make it kind of easy for me to make the transition and start writing.
Well, I would think that that would make you very good as an entrepreneur. Like you're very organized, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. At least the stereotype of people in humanities is that we're much more disorganized. So that can help you out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm very organized in how I write. And you'll see it. There's like structure in how
Mm-hmm.
I write. And that's just like a trait of poetry in general too. So I'm like, maybe that's what it is. But it felt natural, which I don't know, like it felt very natural for me. And I don't know if there's just the whole thing of me saying I was called to do this, that I was in the moment that I realized that I was called to do this, I feel like I was equipped with the tools that I needed to do this, if
Wow.
you know what I mean. So
Right.
it did not feel hard at all.
Mm-hmm.
There's been many other things that I was like, oh, maybe I should do this. And it felt very hard to get started.
Mm-hmm.
Once I had the vision to do this, it felt very easy. And there was nothing that like I wanted to do more. It was crazy because in my work, I do technology consulting, and I was actually working on a vaccine management project for COVID while I was writing these books. And that project at the beginning was very, very, very stressful. And it was literally like 20-hour days to,
Mm-hmm.
because we're over here trying to save the world, I guess, so we were literally working like 20 hours a day,
Talk about
every day of the
everyday
week,
super.
7 days a week. Sorry?
I was saying, talk about everyday superheroes. That
Oh,
yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. But even as stressful as that was, and the long hours that I was doing, I still was excited about when I had to turn off my computer from work and turn on my computer to write these books,
Mm-hmm.
like write these stories, or respond to the illustrator with like feedback, or like that excited me.
Right.
And it was so weird because I'm like, normally I would be like, I'm tired. I just need to go to sleep.
Right.
I'm put this off. I'm gonna have to do this some other time because work is really busy. But I felt so strongly about this that I wasn't about to stop or put it off at all. So it's a very hard thing to explain and describe, but I don't know what was working through me
Mm-hmm.
when I had this vision and when I started to do it. But like it was like something was driving me, something was like keeping me going. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, that's such a great story, and I know that keeps you going now. And I'm just looking at the time. I want to be respectful of your time. So, just one last question before we let you go is, what are you working on now? Or I don't know, how much can you How much?
Yeah, no, I can tell you.
Okay.
I actually just had a call with my illustrator yesterday to start illustrating my next book. I held off on publishing any books earlier this year because my focus has been to really grow the current books and like get them
Sure.
more visibility and all that. But there
Mhm.
was this story that I was just itching to put out. So I'm like, let me talk to the illustrator. So it's a book inspired. So my background, I was born and raised in the island of Trinidad and Tobago. And the popular music in Trinidad is called soca music.
Mhm.
And there is the biggest soca artist in the world comes from Trinidad, and his name is Machel Montano. And he got his start at 7. And his
Wow.
very first song is called Too Young to Soca, because at that time, everyone was telling him that he was too young to
Right.
do it. And he went up and competed against a bunch of adults and placed second. And they even changed the rules after that year and made it so that kids couldn't compete against adults. But that goes to say that, like, this year he's celebrating 40 years as a soca artist, and he is the biggest soca artist in the world.
Mhm.
So I'm working on a book that's inspired by that song.
Mhm.
Too young to what? Too young to soca, too young to uh, be a cook, too young to be a scientist, too young to be an inventor. I don't know,
Mhm.
whatever it is. So the story does is it highlights 10 different kids, younger kids, age 3 to 12, who at their age was
Mhm.
able to do something pretty remarkable. And so when you hear, oh, don't, you can't do that yet, you're too young to do
Right.
that, maybe take that with a grain of salt and keep
Mhm.
trying. Because all these kids, I mean, I'm sure they didn't do it all by themselves. They said it, they voiced that they want to do it, and they had support. And that's what all it takes, right? It just takes someone supporting you. And so I want kids to know that, like, if you're passionate about something and you really want to do something, you're never too young to do it. Age shouldn't be a barrier, especially if it's something productive, right? Like, why not have them try? So that's what that book is about, and I'm really excited about it.
I love that. And I love that you're bringing in your background and the story that most of us that, here in the States probably don't know about. So I can't wait to see it. Do you know about when it might come out?
Yeah, I'm figuring it out. I'm like, maybe later in the year. The illustrator's gonna get back to me with like a timeline soon. She asked me if I have a target date, so I have to think about it. I normally try to like make the date significant to something, so I
Hmm.
have to figure it out. But hopefully soon, hopefully before the year is over. But yeah, that's what I'm working on now.
That's exciting. Well, we will watch for announcements for that. And thank you so much for joining us. It was such a pleasure to talk with you and hear about your story.
Thank you for having me. It's been a joy.
Thank you so much. Bye.